So for some reason, I had no idea Strand was cooking this hard. Honestly, everyone comment shame on you in the comment section. I deserve it. But jokes aside, this one is certainly a build you will want to give a spin, especially if you're looking to make content easier. Now for one, before we jump into it, just want to apologize for my voice. I attended a Yankee playoff game, so it is now cooked. So if I sound a little raspy, yeah, I was screaming a ton. Also, if you enjoy the content and want more from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified on when my next video drops. With that out the way, let's talk about this awesome build. First up, it's worth mentioning what exotics we are going to be using. When it comes to the armor side of things, Wishful Ignorance will be the main option. I will say though that the potential damage you can get from something like Worm God or Synthoceps can be appealing. However, in most content, you can't consistently hit those numbers, especially when compared to how Wishful Ignorance works. Of course, they are options, but I won't personally recommend it for everyone. Now with Wishful Ignorance, let's talk about what this exotic does. So the exotic perk Wish Dragon's Talons reads like this: gain an additional Frenzy Blade charge. Frenzy Blade and Fletch Storm briefly increase their damage with each strike. Pulses from your Banner of War return melee energy based on the number of allies healed. And if we take a further look at the Destiny Data Compendium, the sheet and their Patreon are linked below. We have some more details that exactly describe how good this is. So Wishful Dragon's Talons grants increased Fletch Storm and Frenzy Blade damage. This here on screen is how it's going to be working. So for one stack for Fletch Storm, 10%, 25%, and then a max of 120% increased melee damage, of course, per stack. And then with Frenzy Blade, same thing. We have 20, 50, and 120% increased melee damage per stack. Banner of War pulses grant 5% Frenzy Blade melee ability energy per ally within 10 meters. Fun fact though, the wearer, which means you, the player, also counts as an ally. So yeah, you're technically going to be giving yourself ability energy, helping yourself out. So yeah, it counts. This exotic rocks, and with some of the buffs we saw to melee damage on a baseline with Edge of Fate, this is just a much better and more consistent exotic than it was before, and something I just really recommend you use with this build. So when it comes to exotic weapons, things are going to be fairly interesting as well. The new Rocket Pulse, new Malpais, is my top pick here, but Monte Carlo can be a fine alternative, maybe even a better pick. But with some of these super regen you get from Malpais, and of course the anti-barrier and unstoppable champion capabilities from that pulse, it's hard to use anything else here. So yeah, that's just my personal take. Again, Monte Carlo is a fine alternative if you want to give that a spin. But with some of the groundwork out the way, let's jump into the game and talk about the rest of this build. So here we are in game, and first of all, look at the drip. Jesus, I absolutely love this look. But of course, flame me, praise me, whatever you want to do here, be my guest. So when it comes to our subclass, let's jump in and give it a look. For our abilities, we're going to be using Rally Barricade. Our jump will be High Lift because High Lift Supremacy. And then our melee is Frenzy Blade because, well, we have no other options. Our grenade will be the Grapple Melee, or the Grapple Grenade. There is no reason to use anything else. Honestly, in my opinion, this is just much better. And with some of the stuff you're doing with tangles and throwing that around, you can really slip and move all around the map, which is really nice. Aspects, we're using Fletch Storm. This is really essential to this build. This has two animations. If you're close enough, you can knock back enemies and do some damage. And then once you're in air, you'll start unleashing a rain of unraveling projectiles. One stack of Frenzy Blade can get you 2 attacks per stack. That slide though, that initiates the jump, does count towards that 2 animations per stack. So do keep that in mind. However, with Wishful Ignorance, you do get an extra stack of that Frenzied Melee Blade, so this does help out massively when it comes to just maximizing the potential of this aspect. Now, another way of maximizing the potential of this aspect is going to be Banner of War. This is a essential aspect at this point when it comes to Strand as a whole. In general, when you get it going and things like that, it will grant you an additional 100% increase to melee damage, a 40% increase to your super damage, and a 10% increase to sword damage. All you gotta do is a finisher or melee of some sorts to trigger this. I think even a glaive melee, if you want to use a glaive, does count towards triggering this aspect. It is really really good. I will say though, not having Into the Fray is something that kind of drives me a little bit crazy. So just keep in mind that a lot of what we're doing here is trying to make up some of the ground that we don't have with Into the Fray with some of that woven mail stuff. It does just makes no sense. Banner of War with this other aspect, Flechette Storm, just they're too good together to not use. But Into the Fray, oh man, I really wish we could have 3 aspects, but I think that would just be pretty crazy. So when it comes to fragments, we have Thread Generation. Pretty much this, grants a variable amount of grenade ability energy depending on the source. So generally, the more damage you do, the more you get back. So yeah, when it comes to the next one, Thread of Transmutation, this one is really, really good for just creating some of those tangles that we're going to need. You'll see in the artifact. While you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows create a tangle. This is really good. Just keep in mind when it comes to generating tangles, this does share the global tangle cooldown, I believe, of 12 seconds. So the goal here is just not to burn some of those melee charges we have or melee stacks we have with our Frenzy Blade. We want to generate tangles elsewhere. Also, this has a plus 10 melee, which is going to be great for what we're going for here. Next to that, we have Thread of Warding. Picking up an Overpower grants Woven Mail. Again, this is going to be really, really big here. When picking up an Overpower, though, you will grant yourself Woven Mail for 5 seconds, and there is a negative 10 health hit, which I don't think is that detrimental, but again, just keep that in mind. And then finally, we have Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with a tangle grants melee energy, and depending on the tier of the combatant, upon damaging tangles, it grants a variable amount of melee energy. So tier 1 combatants, you get about 10%, tier 2 is about 18%, tier 3 is about 20%, and tier 4 is about 30%. So keep that in mind when throwing your tangles around, that this will help you with melee energy, which again helps with some of that stuff we're missing with something from Into the Fray, which again is pretty big, but we should be fine. When it comes to our loadout, we mentioned this already with the exotic. You can use Monte Carlo, but new Malpais is my top option here. We are using a solar primary. I got this tier 5 of Hob Char. It is really good. We've talked about this in the past. This is probably my favorite weapon in the game. So yeah, get it, use it. It is incredible. And then when it comes to our rocket launcher, we are using the new Strand rocket launcher. You could use other options here, but bipod, auto loading, I have just found so much love with this rocket launcher. I have not been able to take it off, but again, there is more flexibility here with your power weapon. As we slide over to armor mods, when it comes to our helm, we have a Siphon, Strand, Solar, dual Siphon. You get that from the artifact. We have hands-on, gain bonus super energy on melee kills. This is really, really good in terms of super regeneration, especially when you pair with new Malpais. You're pretty much always somewhat going to be having a super on hand. And then we have Powerful Friends. Collecting an orb of power causes nearby allies to increase their current armor charge by 1. I am just a nice person, I guess you could say, when it comes to that. For our gauntlets, we have an older piece of exotic armor, so keep that in mind what you're looking at. Hence we have the Artifice slot here, but we pretty much got 2 melee fonts and heavy-handed. Just keep in mind that per melee font or per font, you are getting a plus 20. The only catch there is once you get to 3 fonts, you are going to be limited to a plus 50 in total. So as of right now with 2 fonts, that's 2 plus 20s. We're at a plus 40 for our melee stat. So when we have armor charge, our melee stat right here says 126, add 40 to that, and yeah, we are at 166, which is going to give us an increase of melee damage. Now, when we slide over to our chest armor, we have concussive dampener, sniper damage resistance, and since we're using a solar weapon primary, we have solar ammo generation. This increases the ammo generation of our solar weapons. I believe this is a plus 20 per stack. So our 52 is now a 72 technically. So just keep that in mind when it comes to ammo generation mods. For our legs, we have innervation, insulation, and absolution. Nothing too crazy there. And then for our mark, we have time dilation to extend armor charges. The longer our armor charges last, the better here. And then we have powerful attraction, automatically collects nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. This is also good and works with some of that other stuff we have with our ability casting. And then we have outreach, reduces melee cooldown when using your class ability. So yeah, when it comes to our armor mods, that's what we're working with there. Stat recommendations. Pretty much you're going to be wanting to focus in on melee melee first, even enhancing melee as much as you can without hurting weapons and super, even grenade. It is intriguing to see how you can build your overall stats based on the armor you get to drop. The higher the tier, the easier this will be, but really focus in on melee, weapons, then super, and if you can, your grenade stats. The other stuff doesn't really need to be enhanced. Getting to 100 is going to be perfectly fine as is, but again, melee, weapons, super, and then grenade is the order I would recommend. When it comes to our artifact, there are a few things here that really stand out. Flame, Fiber, Freeze is going to be one of those top picks to have. Refresh Threads helps us with some of that melee regeneration, and then Shield Crush also helps us with some of that regeneration depending on, specifically when you have Woven Mail, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage, so that's going to be really good for what we got there, and it goes very well with our build. If you are using a solo weapon like myself, Fever and Chill and Radiant Shrapnel are going to be a must. Also, Elemental Daze should always be selected. This is going to be a really, really solid perk to just mess up those champions because, yeah, it puts in that work. Use it. Also, before I forget, something like Tightly Woven is really good while Woven Mail is active. Gain increased class ability and grenade stats. Again, for us personally, helps with some of that grenade stuff we are missing. But yeah, that's going to be the build as a whole. Let's jump out and give you guys my closing thoughts. So this build, like I said before, is very solid for most content. I will say though, don't take this into the most recent raid, but for those portal activities, this should help make quick work of any challenge that comes your way. Whether you're playing with others or solo ops, this build will not let you down. And if you copy it to a T, this is a perfect build for some of those seasonal conquests that are tied to the new gear modifier, meaning you can't bring in stuff that isn't tagged as new gear. Now, if you want to pull this build for yourself, down below we have a dim link and a Mobalytics link, whatever you want to use, wherever you want to pull it from, be my guest. But that's all I have to say on this one. Comment down below your thoughts on this one. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button, helps out the video a ton. And if you want more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified on when my next video drops. As always, thank you for watching. It's greatly appreciated. Until next time, ShadowNinja here, and I'm out.